Greetings, this is Professor Welch again. Our lecture today will be for Module 6, Politics and Economics. But I want to start out and I want to do some reviewing of Module 5, the role of branches. Remember, the line between the branches of government has become blurred modernly between the executive and the judicial. However, the checks and balances is an important part of our government in America. For example, different branches of government have overlapping authority. Specifically, the president can veto an act of Congress, and with a two-thirds majority vote in Congress, Congress can override the president's veto. The president appoints major federal officials, but only if the Senate, by majority vote, agrees. Accordingly, the separation of powers guards against the abuse of authority. The executive branch has the authority to administer the laws and oversee the administration of government responsibility. The judicial branch has the power to try cases brought to court and to interpret the meaning of the laws under which the trials are conducted. Congress has the duty to pass laws and originate spending bills. The Senate impeaches officials and approves treaties. The importance of the U.S. Supreme Court is as a symbol of justice. And Justice Roberts, when he was confirmed as Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court in 2005, said that judges should act as umpires, passively watching the legal drama and ruling only on disputed points of procedure. And now looking at a very important case under Marbury versus Madison, the president must comply with the United States Supreme Court decision. The president is not above the law. In the case of United States versus Nixon, President Nixon did not want to return the tapes and turn over the tapes. But what happened is the United States Supreme Court said, we are the 300-pound gorilla. We are the most important body, and you must turn over the tapes. So the Supreme Court of all the three branches, legislative, executive, and judicial, is the most important branch, or has the heaviest weight. Now there's another case of Lombard, Lombard versus Louisiana, and the Earl Warren Court supported protest, PROTESTS, and they ruled that blacks who had refused to leave a segregated lunch counter could not be prosecuted. So this is a very important case. The head of ministry is equivalent to the head of state in the United States. And you must remember that the only political system that could guarantee cooperation between legislative and executive is a monarchy. So these are important things to add to our information on Module 5. Now I want to start Module 6 on politics and economics. Now, John Kennedy was the United States president responsible for implementing the food stamp program nationwide, and it was done just kind of on a temporary trial basis, but it was President Johnson who implemented it in more detail. And the United States government takes various steps so that there's not an abuse of the food stamp program. Food stamps cannot be used to purchase alcohol and drugs and for fraud. And modernly, there's a debit card, which has been very useful to food stamps participants, and this helps the government so there's not as much fraud. Now, medical costs consume about 18% of the gross national product, often called GDP. And most of this is paid for government and private insurance. Politicians are wary about limiting Social Security and Medicare expenses, as it could cost them votes. Americans have great reluctance toward entitlement programs, but this can be reduced by them considering the long-term benefits of the entitlement programs and the complexity of government operations, and they may result in inefficiency, and these programs might save time and money by proceeding with caution. Many Americans think that the federal budget goes primary to welfare, and often in our elections that seems to come up. But this is not true. Much of the budget goes instead for the required expenses of Social Security and Medicare and the interest on the national debt. Now, once a citizen of America reaches the age of 65, he or she becomes entitled to Social Security benefits if they've paid into that program, and to Medicare if they've worked sufficiently to get that qualification for that system. And this is true regardless of their wealth. I guess Trump may receive Social Security and Medicare. Medicare anticipates rising costs due to the changing portions of people over 65. Have you looked around and seen the graying of America, how the baby boomers are aging and becoming eligible by age for Social Security and Medicare? In the American welfare state, much less is allocated to welfare in our country than in other countries. Most liberals feel that the poverty line is too low. Liberals note the increased cost of living in the city and child care costs and so forth. Between 1965 and 1973, the percentage of Americans living below the poverty line greatly decreased. DECREASED. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the poverty line is 3 times a minimal food budget for non-farm families of 4. The Vietnam War is largely responsible for deterring Johnson's war on poverty. They say that Johnson was a great legislator, but because of the Vietnam War, his legacy is often diminished. The Vietnam War really consumed our country's attention at that time. Many conservative economists argue that some banks are too big to fail because they would topple the rest of the economy with them. Many people think that Trump's cabinet is a result and includes a combination of people from the too big to fail that went down in 2008. Did Trump drain the swamp, or did he bring his swamp into the cabinet? That's something that you'll have to decide. Conservatives today try to get back to the pure economy advocated by Adam Smith. Adam Smith wrote a wonderful book called The Wealth of Nations, W-E-A-L-T-H, of nation, and this is referenced by conservatives.